Okay, my name is Howard Eber, and I am still an alcoholic. Um, Last week we discussed and read the 10th and 11th step in the Big Book, and we're going to do something a little bit different this week. I've invited three friends to come along and share for about 20 minutes each on two specific questions. One is, how do you work the 11th step? And perhaps maybe a little bit more interesting is, what does meditation look like for you? When I came in here, everyone was telling me you have to meditate, and nobody ever told me how. So I think it may be interesting to hear how some other folks handle that. I'm going to keep the timer. We have 20 minutes for each speaker. I will give a little warning at the 16-minute mark when you have about 4 minutes left. If we go over, we go over, but we're going to try and keep ourselves to that. So without any further ado, I am very honored that these three gentlemen have agreed to be here this evening. And I thank all of you for attending. This is a rather large group. So we're going to get started with my friend Mars Raymer from Texas. Mars, it's all yours.
Howdy, y'all. Can y'all hear me okay? I hope. It's a long way from Texas to wherever you are, that's for sure. And I'm just kind of blown away by how many people I know on this Zoom. It's, I think, my favorite bunch of folks on the face of God's green earth are in this room tonight. Every time I look around, I see somebody else, I go, holy cow, it's pretty special. Y'all mean a whole lot to this old Texan, and I'm glad to be here. When Howard and I talked about this step 11 stuff, it made me smile a little bit, because I don't know if any step I ever trashed as much as step 11. And so it was a real learning process. I just had a lot of assumptions about it and just couldn't quite get it all together for about a decade. I got to tell you, it's amazing if you go back and you look at Bill Wilson on, I'm just going to set this up for a second. I won't drift off into that too far. Go back and look at Bill Wilson on page 10 in his story, and look at how contemptuous he was of anything religious and spiritual. I mean, he was just, it was funny. And then you look at a few years later, he writes and codifies step 11, and it's maybe one of the cleanest, most concise avenues from a busted up dumpster fire over here to a child of God over here. I mean, it's sort of amazing how clear he made that. And I don't know if he had been some spiritual giant when he wrote it, I may not have listened to it at all. But because he was who he was, it was sort of fascinating. It's funny how connected those steps are like that. I'm not sure that a lot of people realize it. If you look back on the bottom of page 14 and the top of page 15, this just takes 2 seconds to read it. But there's for if an alcoholic failed to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice for others, I won't read the rest of it. Failed to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice for others. They're connected. You can't do one without the other. I mean, how effective would we be at carrying a message and helping others if we had no spiritual connection? It'd be just in sponsorship, it would be just two guys slugging it out, trying to exert more ego. It was just sort of crazy. But especially in this room, how many of y'all have ever made that connection to your creator and then realized that things happened in your relationship with other drunks and folks that never would have happened, that you see things with clarity that you never would have seen before? I mean, it gets to be kind of heady stuff to look at it from that perspective like that. For over a decade, I played games with Step 11, and I'm telling you this just because of the men that I sponsor, and I'm fortunate to sponsor a lot of guys these days. I'm blown away by how many of them are walking the exact same path that I walk in the same way. There's just playing games with it. It's like, although they don't say it, their actions say, I'll do this 11th step stuff as long as it's convenient for me to do it. Which, I got to tell you, I mean, it'll get so bad that you'll be going, well, I could either watch some reruns of Storage Wars on TV, or I can sit with God for a minute. I kind of really want to see that Storage Wars thing. See? I mean, it's just crazy. And I don't think I'm the only guy that feels this way. I met a guy named Mark Houston a bunch of years ago before he passed away. And this is probably 22 years ago now. And we were at a conference together, and out of the blue, Mark said, Myers, would it be okay if I ask you a couple of questions? And I said, sure. I mean, we're just sitting, hanging out, waiting for a talk to start. And he said, how much, what's your prayer life like? What's your 11th step like? And I looked at him and I said, you really want to know? And he said, yeah, that's why I asked the question. And I started laughing, and I said, well, it's okay. He said, that's not what I asked you. What does it look like? And I said, as I'm backing out of my driveway in my pickup every morning, I say, God, hope you'll be with me today. And he looks at me and he goes, that's it? That's all of it? And I went, yeah, that is. And he goes, well, Myers, you're what you're going to end up with is the most shallow, ineffective program. You might stay sober for a while, but you're never, ever going to reach the promises. You're never, ever going to reach the things that this book talks about. And I remember looking at him, and I smiled at him a little bit, and I kind of went, well, I'll get back to you on the rest of that. What he was trying to do is get me to look at, and I have done this same thing with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of men over the years, ask them that exact same question. Tell me what that looks like. Because if there's ever a step where we tend to drift sideways, it's in step 11. It truly is. And so anyway, my personal awakening on step 11 stuff was, I had to get disciplined, and I haven't been disciplined about much of anything in my life. But I had to go back and read this stuff, and the step is pretty clear. It's just one direction right after another direction. You can't misinterpret it. So a couple of things, and I'd really rather talk about this, that I really like to do is, the first thing that they showed me was, Myers, get you some of those little notebooks, a little notepad that you can get at Sam's or Costco, or not big ones that you're going to write a bunch of stuff on, but just a little bitty one. To this day, in my bedroom on my nightstand for the last 22 years, I've had a little notepad laying on my nightstand. And when I sit there in the evening, I don't do a whole lot of head scratching, but I write down things that went during the day. Was I a little quick with that guy? Did I do this? Did I do that? I'm just trying to get it out of my head, and get it on a little piece of paper. In the morning when I get up like this, I'll thank God for the day. I'll go to bed. My nighttime is not complicated. My morning is a little more direct. I'll tear that little sheet off, walk downstairs, take a gander at it, and figure out what I need to do to make whatever amends I need to for the day, what I need to take care of. On awakening, it should be, the direction should have said, on awakening, forget your cell phone. I don't know why Bill Wilson didn't write that book. It would have been so effective if he had it. Forget the cell phone. Don't pick it up. Don't look at it. Don't. Because the cell phone is your gateway to chaos. It's a gateway to everything that's going to distract you for the day. And I can't tell you how many mornings, I'm 9 o'clock in the morning and I'm still trying to put out fires on that cell phone. So-and-so needs something. So-and-so needs this. And then just take the stuff out and find someplace quiet. How many of y'all remember an old guy named Joe McQuaney? And I remember sitting at a breakfast one time with Joe McHugh and Cliff Bishop, who was my sponsor for 26 years. And Joe said, Myers, he said, I'm often irritated when I talk to you. You always seem to want to make all of this complicated. And I said, it is complicated. I mean, it's a whole book. And he goes, no, it's not. Listen, it all comes down to this. He said, and you'll see the wisdom later. And he was right. It all comes down to this. How much time are you spending with God? Step 11. How much time are you spending with God's kids? Step 12. But if you don't nail step 11, if you don't get disciplined in step 11, you're going to struggle with 12 because it's going to be just you against the world kind of thing. And you will find working with others is insurmountable. It's not something you're going to want to do. It's the freest day of my life was when I realized that God was doing for me all the things that I couldn't do. And that he was making progress in the lives of other people, that I could affect change for other people. And this was huge stuff for me, to realize that. I've got a little place down here at the cabin. I've got a place down by the creek, that I call Low Church. It drives Londa crazy when I call it that, but it's way down there. And so I call it Low Church. And so when I get up in the morning, I walk down there and I sit. Guys, if you're having troubles praying or meditating or being connected to God, go outside. Just give it a try. I mean, if it's cold, maybe stay on a porch. But there's something special about being outside. There's some connection there. I don't know what it is exactly, but my prayer life and my meditative life is so much better when I get to that situation. Let me cover a couple of things real quick. There was a guy a kid that I met in a meeting one time that he was kind of irritating because he called God Big Homie, and it always made me laugh a little bit. Just like and he said, I was talking to my sponsor today, and we were visiting about some stuff, and he asked me about Big Homie, and I told him everything was good, and I'm just listening to this conversation, and he says, but my sponsor said something that made me smile, and it got me thinking about something. He said, if God was your girlfriend, would she be happy with how much time you're spending with her? And I remember looking at this kid. He's like 19 years old. And I looked at him and I went, that's pretty spot on. That's pretty spot on. We have an opportunity to have a relationship with our Creator that's so amazing. And yet, if we're really honest with ourselves, most of us have a tendency to just sort of do our day. And when the blowtorch slides up against our rear end and we get upset about something, then we reach out to God. But did it ever occur to you, it finally did to me, that maybe God would just like to spend some time with me when there's no fire, when there's nothing going on? It's just me and my homie. This would be pretty special. I want to give you a list, and I can send you a list of these later, or we could talk about it in the meeting, after the meeting too, on this stuff. There were some things that over a period of time changed me. I talked to hundreds and hundreds of guys that I've had a chance to get to know in AA. And one of the questions I love to ask is, what's your step 11 stuff look like? And I'm amazed at how many of them, 25, 30 years sober, I read page 86 and 87. Okay. But doesn't that get old? I mean, Mark used to always say, he said, Myers, he said, where I am today is fine. But where I am today is not where I want to be a year from now. A year from now, I want to be a different place spiritually. I want to grow that. And so all you got to do is go to Google, Amazon, and just put in spirituality and look at how many books come up and how many areas that you can go and look at. There's a little book called In God's Care that's a little daily reader. I have a dozen daily readers, 24 hours a day, blah, blah. I mean, I have got a bunch of them. But this little book, In God's Care, it's published by, it doesn't matter. You will be blown away by how on point that little daily reader is. And I read it every morning still. I love that little deal. There's another guy, there's a book that was written by a guy named Father Jonathan Morris, called The Way of Serenity, which is a non-alcoholic's view of the Serenity Prayer. Guys, how many of y'all have ever read the Serenity Prayer and said the Serenity Prayer so long and so many times it doesn't mean anything? It just doesn't mean anything anymore. It's just something we do. And this guy wrote this book and he absolutely nails it. And I've never, ever said that prayer since I read that little book. It's real small. I've never, ever said it that I wasn't affected in some profound way. It went from being something that was threadbare and I don't really care about it to something that is truly special to this old drunk. Pretty cool. There's another cat, a guy by the name of Joseph Girzone, Girzone, that wrote a little book called Never Alone, that approaches this idea of being moving towards your creator. Guys, whether you're perfect and set and wonderful in your own 11th step profile, rock on. That's terrific. But if you're sponsoring anybody, you're going to run across people over and over and over again that have one hand up like this going, I'm not sure about this spiritual stuff. And so these little books, these little pieces could be effective at helping you move towards those things. I want to tell you a real fast story, and I'm almost done here. There was a kid that I met in treatment years ago that I'll call Steve. That's not his name. And Steve was really struggling with the whole idea of moving towards his creator. He couldn't pray. He couldn't do anything like that. I'd talk to him during the day. And one day he got up during the middle of a class that we were doing on step 11, and he just walked outside. I caught up with him later and I said, hey, what's going on? And he told me, he said, I don't think I'll ever get this thing. And I said, why won't you move towards your creator? They couldn't make it more easy. And he said, I can't do it because of just a bunch of crap. It's just a bunch of stuff that stands in the way. And I said, well, okay. And then I said, you do realize that you can set this up any way you want to. And you can start. Where you start's not important. It's that you start that is important. And he said, okay. The next day, he was sitting right in the very front of the room, which I'd never seen him do. And he was smiling at me. And he said, I think I got this. And I said, tell me. And he said, I think everybody may think it's stupid, but I think God, I think God is like Thor. I thought he said, are you sore? And I said, he said, no, Thor. And I said, you mean like the dude with the hammer? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, rock on. If you'll start, that's all I care about. And he did. And this kid was transformed in treatment. I mean, he was helping everybody. He was doing everything. I saw him about 6 months later. And I said, how's things going? He said, good. I said, how's Thor? And he said, Thor's good. Thor's good. And he said, look at this. And he took his shirt and he had a jacket on top of his shirt. He took it off and pulled his shirt up. And he had this big tattoo of Thor on his back, with his Thor's arm over his shoulder and a big hammer hanging across his chest. I'm talking major ink work here. And I just laughed. I thought, oh, this is special. But he was doing swell. And I saw him about a year later at a deal. And I said, how's it going? He said, fine. I said, how's Thor? Thor's okay. But I've kind of moved farther than that. And I went, no kidding. And he said, yeah, I'll tell you about it later. Well, I missed him at the deal. And for the rest of the evening, I missed him. And so a couple of days later, I got a text from him. And on the text, it said, there's a picture of him standing by something. And I texted him and I said, Steve, I don't know where are you? What are you doing? And he said, I'm getting baptized. Can't you see the baptismal field behind it? And I started laughing and I said, no, now I can see it. Now I get it. The illustration is this.
4 minutes.
You got it, buddy. Where you are is not where you're going to end up. And the only thing that stands between you and an absolutely amazing relationship with your creator is you. don't be hard on yourself. The worst mistake that we make is that we're so hard on ourselves about everything, especially in meditation. If you're new to meditation, just chill, dude. There's no such thing as a bad meditation. If you're spending 2 or 3 minutes, go get you a little that little app on the app store called Insight Timer. You can download it for free. It helped me immensely in my meditation and figuring out what to do. There's a life out there that we don't even know exists because we're so contemptuous and so hard-headed about things. Let all that down. Pray for the willingness. Pray for the ability to just simply relax in God's hands and watch what happens. Guys, that's it. I'm going to shut up right there, but it sure is good seeing y'all.
Thank you so much. I'm going to unmute everybody. Let have a quick acknowledgement for Chris, for Mars. Thank you so much, Mars.
Thanks, Mars.
Thank you, Myers.
Thank you, Myers.
Thank
Great
you.
talk,
Thank you,
Myers.
Myers.
Thank you.
Thank you, Myers.
Thank you, Myers.
Thank you, Myers.
Thank you, Myers.
Y'all come back now. You hear?
Thank you.
Thanks, Myers.
All right, I'm going to
Thank you, Myers.
I'm sorry, I hated to interrupt you, Myers. I never thought I'd get to the point where I'm telling you you're out of time. Thank you for coming. The next speaker is our friend Brad L. This is a kind of a in-family get-together because Brad is Chris Schroeder's sponsor, and Chris Schroeder is my sponsor and Myers' sponsor. So we have it all in the family here today. So without any further delay, here's Brad L.
Good afternoon, evening, wherever you are. My name is Brad, and I'm an alcoholic and a whole lot of other things. I had no idea this meeting was that big. I thought maybe 20, 30 people, and it went from 100 to 200 in just a second there. So
Brad,
anyway,
your camera's off.
Oh. Start video.
There you go.
I'm there? All right.
Yep.
Hey, everybody. Myers said something really good because I thought of this not long ago. If I was as connected to God as I am that, we'd have something. And it's so interesting is how much attention I will give to getting connected to that. All I've got to do is the very same thing is to get connected with God. And there was really, I've read a lot of things and been around different teachers. And there was a teaching a long time ago. There was a teacher that said, man is asleep, dreaming he is awake. And for me, that's what meditation is. Meditation is for me to wake up. I go about it a little bit differently than most people, maybe. For me, the greatest meditation I can possibly do is when I get out of bed in the morning, to be aware of my foot hitting the ground, to know that my foot is on the ground, to try to start to see my inner state. Because what I'm finding is meditation is not something I just do in the morning. Meditation is my day, is my life itself. Myers touched on it. Everyone loves nature, right? Everybody like nature. The reason why is because it's natural. See, most of the time I live a very unnatural thing. That's what I love about Alcoholics Anonymous. Carl Jung said it so beautifully. He said that, I'm kind of paraphrasing, that the alcoholic, he needs a higher power in a community. Excuse me one second. He needs a higher power in a community to protect him from the darkness and evil of the world. And he said he's very careful about using the word evil and that type of thing because people are going to misconstrue what he meant by that. And what I know for myself is this thing is I can either have a thought life or conscious awareness. I cannot have both. I started this journey. I'm a country kid from Nebraska. I come from a town of 200 people, and it is so small and it's so rural back there. And I come kind of from a different religion. So when I came in here, and Myers touched a lot of great things. So if this step 11 is about sought through prayer and meditation to improve my conscious contact with God, it's so easy to tell if it's working or not. Is it improving? I don't want my conscious contact with God to be different in a year. I want it to be different tomorrow. It just depends on how much am I willing to let go of. Just like he said, less Brad, more God. For me, that's what meditation was about. And there used to be a guy named Chuck Chamberlain that was kind of the original circuit speaker. And I used to kind of stalk him to find out what he was doing. Where is he learning all this stuff? And he was involved in a religion called Science of the Mind. And he was actually involved with that while he was drinking it. There was a guy named Ernest Holmes. And I met a guy down there, and this guy was a sober guy, been sober for a long time. And he really helped me out a lot. And he was the one that opened me up to a whole new world. And he was reading some books that I was like, whatever you're reading is completely, I don't understand what you're talking about. There was a guy named Gurdjieff that even Dr. Bob was reading, and that's where that saying came from, man is asleep, dreaming he is awake. But what I remember most distinctly about this thing called meditation, this guy name was Jim Dunnigan, and he was talking at a meeting in the Marina Center, and he was up there and he said, the alcoholic is asleep. And there was a big wooden podium. And he said, the alcoholic's asleep, and he went, and he needs to wake up. And I remember I jumped, and I'd had something trouble with me, and I couldn't remember what it was. It scared me so much back into the moment. And that's when I realized what I was up against. I've been really fortunate on this journey because I really sought to try to find out what it meant to be spiritual. What does it mean to have prayer and meditation? I'm going to read you something out of a book. There was a guy up in Ojai, California that I used to follow a little bit. And he says, meditation is one of the greatest arts in life, perhaps the greatest. And one cannot possibly learn it from anybody. That is the beauty of it. It has no technique and therefore no authority. When you learn about yourself, when you watch yourself, watch the way you walk, how you eat, what you say, the gossip, the hate, the jealousy, if you're aware of all that in yourself without any choice, that is part of meditation. So meditation can take place when you're sitting in a bus or walking in the woods full of light and shadows, or listening to the singing of birds, or looking at the face of your wife or child. He talked about this thing called meditation, completely different. See, for me, meditation, like Myers said, nature is meditation itself. You know, we domesticate animals and we basically dummy them down and we take away their awareness. That's what I was saying. For me, meditation is being aware of what's my inner condition like all day long. And watching my reactions to different things, and then without identifying with any of my reactions. Because that's the 10th step and the 11th done all at the same time. I had that same guy, Jim Dunnigan. He kept telling me about you can be meditating all day long. And I really didn't understand what he was talking about. And I called him one time, and I was in a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear. And I can still remember where I was at. And I said, what am I going to do, Jim? Because I'm going to these meetings. I'm doing everything I can. I'm sponsoring people. I'm good. I've got the greeter commitment, but something's wrong. And he said, that's real easy. One day at a time won't work for you. So I don't know you, but I thought, okay, now I'm done, because I thought that was the program of AA. He said, no, it's too big for you. So he said, get a piece of paper and a pen out. And he had me write this down. I am now, draw a line, exclamation mark. I was like, okay, what am I going to do with that? He said, what are you doing next? I said, I'm going to go to one of those AA meetings. I'm going to get in the shower and I'm going to one of those meetings. So here's what you're going to do. You're now turning on the water. You're now picking up the soap. I used to have hair. I'm now washing my hair. I'm now getting out of the shower. I'm now walking to the doorway. And you know what, guys? I got some relief. See, Myers talked about it. All those things that I said and did out there when I was drinking and using, drugs and alcohol didn't make me do that. Drugs and alcohol took away all my inhibitions, so I let it out. So when I get sober, the lid went on it. It's all in there, just boiling. Some of you guys have probably read some of the letters that Bill wrote when he had 20-some years of sobriety. And he was talking about that he was reciting his drunk log in this sleep state. He was working with all these new people. And he actually says the rest of the steps will keep you sober, but it is through step 11 that you grow. And he said, you know, I've been missing something. This is a 20 years sober. He's being really honest about it. He goes, I've been talking about it, but I'm not really doing it. And that's the beautiful thing that I love about Bill Wilson. He was so honest about it. See, I have this thing called a personality, and I think it's either Greek or Latin, which means mask. My prayer in the morning is, God, help me to see what I'm really like. God, help me keep the integrity of my own mind. A lot of guys that I talk with and work with, when we go and do the third step prayer, I have them recite it with me. But then I want them to tell me, what does that mean to you? What does that mean when you're doing that? You know, for me, one of the things that happened to me as far as doing prayer meditation and learning what it means to be present, because everybody here probably loves animals and nature, and I've got a chance to be around. I was up in Bozeman, Montana, a little town out by Big Timber, and I was cold, but I was up on this hill, and I can probably see, it was such a great feeling because I did a 360 and I didn't see anything that was man-made. But the friend of mine owns this ranch. It overlooks the valley where they shot the movie, The Horse Whisperer. And it was really interesting. That movie was about three men, not one. And I got a chance to spend time with all three of them. And he said, that guy that was about there was a man named Tom Dorrance. And he said, Brad, when you come walking up to a horse, he knows everything about you because he's not thinking about you. He's watching you. He's observing you. See, you can tell where you're growing because if you're treating somebody from when you met them yesterday, shame on me. I should treat them purely in that moment. See, but I live from this thought self that carried yesterday and today. And I'm trying to be there. You can't cram them all into the same place. You know, when I come from religion was kind of tough and I had kind of a difficult time. And for me, I kind of had to redo things. And these are all my opinions. These are all my observations. But, you know, in the Bible, it says, I always thought it said the truth sets you free. It doesn't say that. It says you will know the truth and that will set you free. Two different things. You know, we talk a lot about it. For me, what meditation does is it gives me an opportunity to get past this unconscious human condition. We talk about that a lot, but it's just that I'm unconscious. I'm not aware of what I'm doing as I'm doing it. And get back to nature, what I realized sitting up on this hill outside was a little tiny town called McLeod. And I was sitting up there a few years ago, and it just hit me that, you know, nature's changing. It's always going forward. It's always changing, but it's always right now. And I went, wow, that's just so beautiful, because what happens for me, you know, in the Bible, it says, seek ye first the kingdom of God and all his righteousness, and all else will be added unto you. And I realized, oh my God, all I have to do is seek the present moment, because that's where God's at. That's what meditation is trying to do, to try to get me to be in this moment. But the tough part about it, I can't use the mind to get in the moment. I've been really fortunate in my life to get a chance to meet a lot of different people. And it wasn't because I was really spiritual. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. I've had an opportunity to have tea with the Dalai Lama. And I had an opportunity to sit down with Eckhart Tolle one-to-one. What was really fascinating with the Dalai Lama is he said, I'm not a teacher. And he wasn't trying to be humble. He said, I'm not a teacher. There's been teachers. I've met teachers, but I'm not a teacher. That's not what my position is. But there was a couple other women came in the room and they were asking about meditation. And they asked him something. I can't remember what it is. He said, if you meditate for years and years and years and years, and I could feel everybody pulling closer, he'll get to see that way deep down inside, you wanted nothing to do with these meditation or with these teachings. I wanted to jump out of my seat. I go, I get it. You see, I've been in here. It's freedom of body to self. It's not about making the self better. It's about getting free of the self. See, I have a disease and it has a voice and it sounds just like Brad Langenberg. And it talks all day long. And I think that's me talking to me. So for me, meditation is learning how to drop those voices. Why wouldn't you want to do that all day long? See, I've been mechanical. Meditation gives me an opportunity to be spiritual. So easy. If I want to be spiritual, all I have to do is be less mental, and I'm right there. The other thing that kind of got me, and I was thinking about prayer and meditation, because my favorite prayer is, God help me. And then watch. Because guess what wants to happen after I say, God help? I want to meddle in it. See, my job is no matter what happens, like I said, I try to seek the present moment. Let God handle all that. Just like somebody, I think Myers said, what does that serenity prayer mean to you? For me, it's talking about the only thing that take away what's manageable, what's unmanageable. The only thing I can manage at all is this present moment. If I get into the future, I'm in anxiety. If I get into the past, I'm into depression. I'm really grateful I found something in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm grateful for some men that really pushed me to go find out what these ideas mean to you. Because you can repeat all kinds of phrases pretty easy. Like for me, God can't really be talked about. God can only be lived. I had a sign on my wall here. I'm in Santa Monica, California. I used to have this up here, and it said, the kingdom of heaven is in the space in between two thoughts. I know that to be true. So for me, this thing that I call meditation, and, is not me sitting down in the morning. This is just mine. It's not sitting down. When I sit down, and I had a chance to spend time with Eckhart Tolle, and it was really interesting. He said, Brad, don't try to stay in the moment. That's going to be too much for you. He said, but what's really powerful? Catch yourself not in the moment. When he meditated, he didn't close his eyes. He was aware. We can do that. And actually, these teachers would actually say, when you go to an AA meeting or any meeting at all, you can change the whole dynamics of the room. And we can do that right now. When I walk into a room and like there's a meeting I get to that's big that I get scared, I start to become one with the room. That's my meditation. I start to place things in the room. So I start getting get connected to here and now. Part of this is just knowing what I'm doing as I'm doing it. Did you know in the Bible that the word remember is in there twice as many times as the word faith? The origin of the word remember is mindfulness. I just thought that was so interesting. You see, there was a teacher, Gurdjieff, he used to talk about man needs to remember himself. So throughout the day, and I've actually talked to Chris about this, I do a lot of groups. I've done a ton of groups. I've done something called equine therapy for quite a while. And you can always kind of tell where people are at by their gaze. If you got somebody, you guys all know this, if you got somebody in a meeting and they got their arms closed and they're looking down, you know that they're kind of in trouble. They're on the way down the rabbit hole. If they're looking just a little bit at gaze and maybe at the floor, at the feet of the other people, it's a little bit better. But when I'm looking up and around, we got something else. I'm connected. I'm at one with the room. I used to give riding lessons to people with horses, and how I got that was people, when they're riding, they're always staring at the ears of the horse. Like they're not going to fall off. You should be looking up and around where you're going. You're a driver, not a passenger. I noticed that when I was in New York, people there, a lot of times you could go up to them, wave your hands in front of them. They wouldn't even know you're there. A lot of them are looking at the pavement 10 feet in front of them. I've done that myself. But when I'm out there, I'm trying to look up and around. So animals have a certain awareness, and I'll go back to domesticating them. Until we domesticate a dog or a horse, if a leaf or a twig, something breaks in the distance, man, they know. You guys probably know of some labs you could walk by, they don't even know it. That's what I'm going for in my sobriety. This meditation where I can be aware, and this is what I'm trying to do right now, is to be aware of what's going on inside of me, to know the expression on my face as I know the expression on your face, to be aware of any anxiety or fear that's going on in me, to be aware of myself as I'm moving my house, moving my hand, and then watching these and not having any identification of what goes on. It's just to be able to see it because it's happening, right?
5 minutes, Brad.
This whole thing of inventory and prayer meditation has given me a completely different outlook on life, because I realize I've been mechanical all my life. I didn't have the higher power that I was, of my own understanding. I had the higher power I was taught. These are my own insights. I don't think Jesus was ever trying to start a church. I think it was a school. He actually talked in there, said that the carnal mind is an enmity with God. It is not under the law of God, for it cannot be. The mind of this world, yesterday, tomorrow, I like, I dislike, I want, all, I. You know, the origin of the word ego is I. So the minute I go there, I'm completely disconnected. Myers mentioned it so many times. If I want to have conscious contact with God, there's one thing that I need to have. There's a prerequisite. I need to be conscious. I need to be awake and aware. All these teachers, there was a teacher that I followed, and I don't like really mention names, but he actually would talk about, he said at night he could sleep and be aware of what was going on outside. The teacher that I mentioned up in Ojai, when he would take walks, he said he was able to walk for an hour and there'd be no thought. How's that? See, I have a dis-ease of the mind. So it'd be wise to not just do it in the morning. And that is very important to start off with a ritual. Like I said, when I first started off, guys that are new, I tell them, just give me 3 minutes. 1 minute of writing, 1 minute of reading, and then 1 minute, you can close your eyes if you want to, you don't have to, but just to sit back and observe your thoughts. See what the machine says and does. I can do that here. Just sit down on the sofa and just see what it says. Because that's what's been talking to me all my life. But see, I always thought that was me talking to me, and that wasn't me talking to me. I've been taking direction from something from the wrong place. How many people here throughout the day think you need to stop and get connected? Anybody think you pause and get connected? Here's the question. What were you connected to before that? Right? I got a gift. It's called sobriety. My prayers were answered when I realized I could do nothing for myself, from myself. And my whole life opened up. I'm really grateful for you guys asking me to come and share at your meeting. Good evening.
Thank you so much, Brad. That was great. I'm going to open it up, let everybody kind of have a word. There we go.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you, Brad.
That was awesome.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you, Brad, so much.
Thank you,
Brad.
Brad.
Great.
Brad, I appreciate it. Thanks for coming.
Good job, buddy.
Brother.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Good stuff, Brad. Good stuff.
Thank you, Brad.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Newcastle, New Jersey.
Thank you, brother.
That kind of sounds like
Chris Schroeder.
all the screaming of a
Good.
thousand monkeys in
I
your
don't
head.
know about Brad.
All those people
It
speaking
was
at once.
okay. They're both
That was just
like
Marty.
after doing what he introduced me to. It's
You
like,
ride horses, don't you?
these guys are all simple things. It's good. They're right, but they're just on the cusp of what. What
Okay. Brad, you ride horses, don't you? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you're muted again. All right.
I told him to ask that, Brad, because I love horses.
Kathy loves horses.
Oh, yeah. No, I do.
We'll have to visit you one day and ride some. Thank you for coming. I appreciate everybody being here, and we're going to wrap it up with Brad's sponsee and my sponsor, Chris Schroeder. It's all yours, Chris.
Hi, everybody. My name is Chris. I'm an alcoholic. Well, I'm really enjoying this meeting. The two men that spoke, I love both of them very much, and there's a lot of people on here who I'm friends with. So this is a lot of fun. Thank you, Howard and Kathy and everybody that helps with this meeting. So many good things were said. And the questions that Howard wants us to answer, or we've kind of been directed to answer. So much wonderful information has been shared. What do I do upon awakening? Yes. Do I do an evening review? Yes. As I move through the day, do I pause when agitated or doubtful and ask for the right thought or action? Yes. All that stuff. But the importance of it, I want to talk a little bit about the importance of it. I believe that the third step, the material just prior to us making a decision in the third step, in the book Alcoholics Anonymous, I think it really paints a beautiful picture of what the real problem is. Chris's real problem. And what that is selfishness and self-centeredness, manifestations of self. So when you separate me from alcohol, alcoholism washes over me with the best way I can describe it is like this. It's a toxic experience of self-consciousness, right? The book Alcoholics Anonymous says, self had defeated us. There's a lot of real, almost mystical kind of information in the book Alcoholics Anonymous that really points, puts the light right back on me. What is my real problem? And I believe step 3 kind of pulls the covers off of the problem a little bit. And I believe step 11 is the finale to the solution to that problem. So my real problem is I'm overly self-conscious when I'm separated from alcohol. And it's almost a mental illness. It's so extreme. I've learned how to, act like I'm not completely insane and get around in the world. But what's going on in my head is really, really toxic. It looks something like this, I'd be like, oh man, I can't believe that happened. My job, my boss, I hate my boss. What he said to me yesterday, I can't even get it tomorrow. I'm going to go up and have words with him. Why are these people driving so slow? Why are these people driving so slow? What the hell is the matter with the world today? This is the stuff that's going through my head. And as a sober alcoholic, with a couple of weeks sober. And if I was honest with people about some of the things that are going through my head, I'd be afraid somebody would throw a net over me. So I act as if I'm sane. And that is the experience I have, and how ugly it is and how uncomfortable it is. Now, the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, all the particular steps are brilliantly designed to take me from an experience of overly self-conscious to an experience of God consciousness. Because that really is what the solution is to alcoholism. The problem is not being connected, and the solution is to get connected. Spirituality, one of the great definitions of spirituality that I like is spirituality is a personal inner pathway to connection with the divine. And that's what I need. Now, when I walked into Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm glad you didn't tell me that on day one. Chris, your problem is you need connection to the divine. I would have been, no, I need to stop drinking a quart of bourbon on a work night every night. That's what I need. So it's kind of like coming to believe, and there's a process in the steps, and there's a peeling back of this awareness that both Brad and Myers were talking about, this self-awareness. We have to become part of this recovery process. And today I believe that the quality in my life is directly proportional to the amount of attention I pay to living a spiritual life. Now, like Brad and like Myers, I'm a big reader, right? Myers binds books. Brad has stacks of them. I'm right there with these guys. Okay. We're readers, and I love reading spiritual literature. I've always got a spiritual book, on my night table that I'm reading. Now, I want to explain something that I've found. I think it's valuable to read and learn about spirituality, how it has helped me, all this reading, because there's spiritual giants out there that we can learn so much from. What it has helped me is it's given me a really good vocabulary when I'm talking about spiritual topics. All right, and that's really kind of helpful, and I understand certain pathways. But what has fundamentally transformed me has been action that I've taken. In the early days, I wanted to learn my way recovered. And I don't think you can learn your way recovered. I think you can learn how to take spiritual exercises and how to take some action. And if you do that, what that does is the results of those actions bring about a change in attitude, in outlook, a change in belief systems, a change in perception. And this is basically what's happened to me today. Through the practice of step 11, I have woken up. Whether I'm fully awake or not, I can't really say because, there's always more work to do. But I see things today as they really are. The way I saw things when I was an untreated alcoholic, I saw the world through the lens of self-consciousness. I saw the world through the hazy lens of alcoholism. And I had so many things wrong about how the world works and my purpose and my place in the world. I want to share just a current experience because it has a lot to do with why the instructions in step 11 and how the instructions in step 11 can be valuable in real life situations. Okay, Friday morning, I get a call from my niece. This is my sister's daughter. And my sister's daughter's kind of been taking care of her. She's been in the hospital, not doing really well. And she called me up and she said that my sister had passed. Now, this is her daughter, who is living by herself in Manhattan, doesn't have a car, doesn't have the will, all of the stuff that she's going to need for the next 2 or 3 days worth of work is up on the Great Lakes, up by Marty somewhere, up by Canada. And she's got to know where to get there. So would I want to do this if I was living in a place of self-consciousness? Would I want to jump in and get involved in all this stuff? No, but it was automatic. How can I help? I'll come get you. We'll drive up to New York. We'll dig through the house. We'll find the will. We'll go to the church and make arrangements. I'll be there. I'll be there for you. I know how hard this is on you. And I was able to be there and not be an inconvenienced, selfish, how the hell do I get out of this kind of guy? I intuitively understood this is where I need to be. This is what I need to be doing. Now, if you knew anything about me when I walked through the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous, you know what? I would have made this whole thing about me. I can't believe my sister died on me. Now I'm gonna have to go to, I'm gonna have to do all this stuff. I'm gonna have to drive all over the place. I'm gonna have to go to a funeral. I'm gonna have to do a wake. I'm gonna have to stand in line and wake and shake everybody's hand that I don't know. I hate wakes. that would have been how I would have handled this as an unrecovered alcoholic, because I'm living in the place of self-consciousness, right? But this awakening that they talk about in the 12th step, this awakening is, I understand my place. I understand my role, and I have been rendered helpful through this process of Alcoholics Anonymous. I've been rendered useful. And that's just kind of one example. Now Brad went over a couple of exercises that he does, and he taught me a few of these exercises, and I use them a little bit differently than he does. Because I'm weird, okay? But I want to share with you 3 of the exercises that Brad gave me, because I believe they're directly related to the 11th step and what the 11th step is trying to do for us. Okay. He said that he had been given a card where it says, I am now blank, okay? So I don't stay aware of this all the time, but when I do become aware of this exercise, I'll tell myself something like, I am now on a Zoom with a whole bunch of my friends speaking. I'll tell myself what I'm doing. Now, how has that helped me? It's helped me stay in the now. Because of this download, because of this default setting that I have that tries to suck me back into selfishness and self-centeredness, staying in the now is being present, being mindful is another way to describe it, is really, really helpful to me, because there's no problems right now. There's no pain and suffering right now. So how about staying right here, right now, and by taking an accounting of what I'm doing at any particular time, helps me to stay in the now. Now, asking God for help. All right, God, please help. I did it before this Zoom. God, please help me to carry some type of a reasonably decent message today with all of my friends. God help me, God help me, God help me. What does that do? That keeps me in a place where I need to be, the consciousness of the presence of God. That's one of the things that the book Alcoholics Anonymous talks about, the consciousness of the presence of God. God being God is not just somebody I pray to in the morning and somebody I check in with at night. The consciousness of the presence of God as I move through the day. That's an incredible, valuable relationship and experience to have. Now, he also talked about, how about looking up? Don't look at the horse's ears. How about looking up? How I do this is when I walk outside, and this isn't how he explained for me to do it. When I walk outside, I look up, and I look up at the sky, and I live out in the country. I look at the trees, and I look at the geese, and we've got chickens next door, and I just look up, and what that does is that creates within me a really serious gratitude, a gratitude for this cathedral that God has put in front of me. I believe today that that this is, God made a playground for us. Just think about when you were in second or you were in third grade. Okay. And you'd go out in recess, and you had to learn how to get along. You had to learn how to get on teams, and you had to learn how to make friends, and, you had to learn how not to misbehave and stuff. Yeah. I think we're still doing all that. You know what I mean? We're still trying to figure out how to do this thing called life. And I believe this connection to the divine is the thing that makes this whole thing go smooth. I do not believe I would have been able to stay sober the 30 some years. I don't think I would have been able to stay sober without some type of connection to something greater than me. You know, in the 11th step, I'm gonna end with this. There is an individual who spoke on the 11th step. I was down at this thing called Man to Man in way down at Lake Brownwood, Texas, with Myers and a whole bunch of other people not long ago, right? And they would have the morning meditation. You would get up at like 7 a.m. and everybody pile in and someone would be leading the meditation. And what this individual did was he came right out of the book. Now, how I have transformed my perception of meditation, I've let a lot of Eastern stuff in. You know, I've let a ton of Eastern stuff in. And that's good. You know, I think there's enough latitude within the concepts and processes and procedures of meditation that we need to find our own path, and we need to find what works for us, and we need to find what gives us the best connection. But what was really unusual about this presentation was there wasn't one word that you could have attributed to anything except stuff that was going on in America, you know, in 1938. You know, it was straight out of the book. It was Christian contemplative, without anything that even smelled like the Buddha, you know, and it was refreshing. It you know, what Bill had put together, the instructions of what Bill had put together in this chapter and in this step are transformative, but they're also very simple. They're very simple. I think the spiritual life is a simple life. And it's through a lot of these simple exercises that I've come to, you know, where I am today. Now, I'm the type of person who really likes to overly complicate things. I'll just give you a for instance. I remember I'm about one year sober, and somebody gave me the book of The Course in Miracles that has 365 incredibly complicated and difficult exercises. You're supposed to do one of them every day. You know, it was the most complicated thing I've ever seen in my life. But I appreciate that I've gone through it, but I've found that there's simplicity in this spiritual life, that a lot of times the things that are very, very simple are the things that have been transformative in my life. So, you know, where Bill and you know, got a lot of this stuff. I mean, I really think that there was some inspiration going on. I think he was the right guy at the right place at the right time, reading the right stuff, listening to the right people. And he put together a process that not only is about recovery from alcoholism, but it's also about waking up. It's also about getting along. It's also about becoming a good person out there while we're in recess, and I'm really, really grateful to be here with a bunch of my friends tonight. God bless all of you.
Thank you, Chris. I'm gonna open it up and let everybody else loose for a moment, and then we're gonna wrap up.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Chris.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris.
Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks, Chris. Great to
you
see
so
you.
much. Love the cathedral.
Thank you, Chris.
Good.
All right now. Bye.
Thank you, Chris.
I've asked Desi to take us out with page 164. And when he gets about halfway through, we're going to all join in, if you wouldn't mind. Desi, can you see that?
Yeah, I've got it, Howard. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for everyone that's made day tonight possible. I'm Des. I'm a very grateful member of Alcoholics Anonymous. Our book is meant to be suggestive only. We realise we know only a little. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. Ask him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who is still sick. The answers will come. If your own house is in order, but obviously you cannot transmit something you haven't got. See to it that your relationship with him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and countless others. This is the great fact for us.
And I'm going to ask
Abandon yourself to God as you understand God.
Abandon
Commit
your
thoughts
to him and to your
throw away the wreck of your past.
freely
Find
of
and
what you
join us.
find and join us. Shall be with you in the fellowship of
Surely
meet some of us as we travel the road ahead.
Bless you.
Bless you and keep you until then.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done.
Thy name, kingdom come, will be done on
Our
earth.
daily bread.
Our trespasses. This day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses. We forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. And this the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever.
We're coming back.
we will be having our coffee shop meeting